Hello and welcome to News Central Television with me, Blessings Mosugru. The top stories at this hour. World leaders react to the passing of Pope Francis. Christian Association in Nigeria holds peace march in protest to killings in Plateau State. War veterans leader in Zimbabwe calls for two-day protest demanding President Emerson Mnangagwa's resignation. We've got the details in a moment. Now, world leaders have expressed their condolences following the passing of the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis. Israeli President Isaac Herzog extended his deepest sympathies to the Christian world, describing the Pope as a man of profound faith and compassion. He highlighted Francis' commitment to strengthening Jewish-Christian relations and promoting interfaith dialogue. Germany's Chancellor-in-waiting Friedrich Merz said he was filled with deep sorrow at the news, describing the Pope's death as a personal loss. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has paid tribute also, saying the Pope inspired millions well beyond the Catholic Church with his humility and boundless love for the less fortunate. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he was deeply pained by the news. He's extended his heartfelt condolences to the global Catholic community. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called Pope Francis a trailblazer for interfaith harmony, peace, and the betterment of humanity, describing his passing as an irreparable loss to the world. Now, the world is mourning the loss of Pope Francis, the first pope from the Americas and the transformative figure in the Catholic Church. Known for his humility, compassion, and commitment to social justice, Francis redefined the papacy for the modern era. Our international correspondent, Afia Hagen, looks back at his remarkable life and legacy.
He was the Pope who shunned luxury for simplicity, choosing to live in a modest Vatican guest house rather than the papal apartments. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, on December the 17th, 1936, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, was the son of Italian immigrants. Before entering the priesthood, Bergoglio worked as a chemical technician and briefly as a bouncer. Ordained as a Jesuit priest in 1969, he rose through the ranks of the church, becoming the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998 and a cardinal in 2001. From his early days to his historic election as the 266th Pope in 2013, his mission was clear: to bring the Catholic Church closer to the people. His papacy was defined by advocacy for the poor, environmental justice, and outreach to marginalized communities. He called for urgent action against climate change and emphasized global unity and compassion. Choosing the name Francis in honor of St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of the poor and the environment, he immediately signaled a papacy centered on humility, compassion, and social justice. Pope Francis challenged the Church to be a field hospital for the wounded, emphasizing pastoral care over rigid adherence to doctrine. But his papacy wasn't without controversy. He called for greater inclusion of LGBTQ+ Catholics, divorced couples, and women in leadership roles. That sparked both praise and criticism within the Church. Francis also tackled internal church issues, pushing for financial transparency and accountability in the wake of the clergy abuse crisis. On the world stage, he acted as a peacemaker, facilitating dialogue between Cuba and the United States, advocating for refugees, and speaking out against war. Despite facing health challenges in his later years, Pope Francis remained active in his ministry, continuing to travel and inspire millions with his message of mercy and hope. As the bells toll across the Vatican, the world remembers a pope who sought not power but peace, not grandeur but grace. The Vatican says preparations are underway for Pope Francis's funeral, expected to draw world leaders and worshippers from across the globe. His legacy, however, will endure far beyond the walls of St. Peter's Basilica. For News Central, I'm Afia Hagen.
All right, for more on this, I'm now joined by international correspondent Afia Hagen. I'm also joined by the Reverend Father Lawrence Mduduzi Ndlovu, who is the administrator of the Cathedral of Christ, the King of Johannesburg in Archdiocese. I'll start with Afia Hagen. Afia, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us what do we know about the death of the Pope so far?
So his death was announced just before 9 a.m. Our time, and it was announced by saying at 7:35 this morning. The Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the house of the Father. His entire life was dedicated to the Lord, to the service of the Lord and his church. Now, that was a statement issued by Cardinal Kevin Farrell. He went on to talk about the gratitude they had for his example as a true disciple of the Lord Jesus, and said, "We commend the soul of Pope Francis to the infinite merciful love of the one and true God." Now, the death of Pope Francis came after quite a busy period for the Pope. Remember, he had been in hospital for 38 days at Rome's Gemelli Hospital with double pneumonia. He was released to spend time at home, and he was given doctor's orders to rest. But the Pope, being the Pope, liked to keep his busy schedule. Last week, Thursday, on Monday, Thursday, Francis visited a prison in Rome for 30 minutes. On Saturday, Holy Saturday, he visited St. Peter's Basilica. And yesterday, Easter Sunday, he gave the traditional Easter blessing from the balcony in St. Peter's Basilica. His aide read his address, but he was there present on the balcony. He appeared without that nasal cannula, which has been helping him receive oxygen. And he said, "Brothers and sisters, Happy Easter." We also know that he had a private meeting with Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, yesterday. Also, J.D. Vance has since said that he could tell that the Pope wasn't terribly well during that meeting. So quite a shock, I think, to people that, we did see him out and about over this holy period, the most holy time in the Christian calendar, and then waking up on Easter Monday after the celebration of Easter Sunday and in this Easter season to the tragic news of the Pope's death at 7:35 a.m. this morning.
Right, and how would we describe the impact of Pope Francis's death on the global Catholic community, particularly in Africa?
Thank you very much for having us. Indeed, we're very saddened by the passing on of Pope Francis. His impact is going to be felt for many reasons, because he was a priest first and remained fundamentally a priest at the service of the people, regardless of the fact that he was Pope, a priest at the service of the people in the world. He not only introduced reforms within the church, the transformation of the church from within, but was also interested a lot in social justice, issues of inclusion, issues of bringing on new ways of transforming the church, its leadership, and indeed society. So his impact, was already felt when he was alive, but it will continue because the work that he had started came from a place of great humility and great humanity, and the recognition of people as all equal under God, whether of another faith, whether they were poor, whether, and so on. And he was interested in going to the margins of society and making the margins of society, the marginalized, the new center of the church. At some point, as the world was, moving in a particular direction, he became almost like a voice in the wilderness, still speaking strongly for refugees, because of course he himself came from a family of refugees. The recognition of from the communities, the LGBTQI communities. That phenomenal statement, he said very early on, "Who am I to judge, if a person truly seeks the will of God?" Saying to us as priests that, the priest must have the smell of the sheep. He must be that close to the people that he serves. And speaking strongly to priests about, carrierism and clericalism and all of that, and putting the people at the center. This was his legacy, and taking the church in a particular direction, which we want to believe will transform the church ultimately.
All right. I would also like to ask Afia this question. What would you say has been the reaction to his death so far in Rome and around the world? I know that we did read earlier about, the world leaders sending in their condolences and talking about how great a leader he was. But what has been the response of the Catholic Church and, worldwide regarding his death?
Well, in Rome, around St. Peter's Basilica, crowds are gathering at the moment. The bells have been tolling since the death of the Pope was announced this morning. And around the world, as you said, we did have some reaction from some world leaders from Germany, from France. I can also tell you that Britain's King Charles III paid tribute to Pope Francis, saying that himself and his wife, Queen Camilla, are most deeply saddened to learn of the Pope's death, but he went on to say that he was glad that Pope Francis was able to share an Easter greeting with the Church on Sunday, a day before his death. He went on to say that His Holiness will be remembered for his compassion, his concern for the unity of the Church, and for his tireless commitment to the common causes of all people of faith. The UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer also paid tribute, saying his leadership in a complex and challenging time for the world and the Church was often courageous, yet always came from a place of deep humility. We've heard from the New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, saying the Pope was a man of humility. His legacy includes an unwavering commitment to the vulnerable, to social justice, and to interfaith dialogue. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk paid tribute to the Pope on X, calling him a good, warm and sensitive man. Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun said on Pope Francis's death it was a loss for all humanity, as he was a powerful voice for justice and peace, a champion for the poor and the marginalized. And so from around the world, from the tributes we had earlier on, from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, from Germany's Chancellor-in-waiting Friedrich Merz, in every single tribute we are hearing and talks about the Pope's commitment to justice, to the poor, to the marginalized, to peace, and a really common thread coming through there from world leaders who are mourning his loss this morning.
All right, thank you, Afia. Let me go back to the Reverend Father Ndlovu. What role would you say that Pope Francis played in the relationship between the Vatican and the African Church, and how do you think that his passing will affect this dynamic?
The Holy Father was on a mission to really take that which was considered non-center, like the African continent, especially in a church that has been viewed rather to be very Eurocentric, and place that at the center of the church. You saw that firstly in the many appointments that he has done, whether in the Curia, in the Vatican Curia, in the members of committees and councils and so on, that he always made sure that there were Africans represented there. But also, he held the African continent, which is one of the areas where the church is growing very fast, as a very dear part of the life of the church. He held many a conversation, many a synod, many on such, where Africans were also very much, their voices were very much at the center of the life of the church. But not only just internally in the life of the church, the advancement for peace and transformation. He visited the African continent, and he intentionally chose to visit countries that are not always the ones that are always going to be elected or selected, the bigger cities and so on of the continent, because he wanted to show that the marginalized were important as well, those countries that perhaps people never really think about. He gave cardinals, for example, Lesotho had a cardinal for the first time under Pope Francis, and so on. But also the project of peace. He often spoke at almost every Angelus when he was offering prayers for the world and offering addresses on the world. He spoke about peace, whether in Congo, whether incidences across the continent of Africa, because he was interested in the well-being and the thriving of people, regardless of where they are, but most especially in the African continent. He held the African continent very dear because he himself thought of himself as one who comes from the new world, the non-European world. And so he had a great affinity for the African continent because it too is an important part of the world and a growing part of the faith itself.
So I guess my last question to you, Reverend Father, would be what happens now after the death of the Pope?
Now that the Holy Father has returned to the house of the Lord, as the statement said, the Church will now begin a period of preparing for his funeral. We do know that he has elected to be buried in the Basilica of Maria Maggiore, Mary Major. That is a basilica he often visited. Every time he came back from a trip, every time he went on a trip, he started at Mary Major because he had a great devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And that's the place that he's elected to be buried at. The processes of his funeral will take place, and the mourning period, which will take 9 days, will then take place. Then after that, it is the activities that are interested with the conclave and the selection of the new Pope. So the Church is right now in mourning, but in mourning, albeit differently, because this is the first day of the Easter octave when we celebrate the resurrection of our Lord. So the Church not only is in mourning, but it is also rather joyous in its mourning, because the Holy Father is destined, or is at the destination which he always prayed for, to be with the Father. And we have seen his work, and we can only commend that all the masses across the world, all the churches across the world will be praying for him during this time.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend Father Lawrence Mduduzi Ndlovu, for joining us and discussing this. It's really sad, the passing of the Pope, and we send our condolences to the Catholic Church and even the world at large, and we'll see how this turns out. Also, a big thank you to our international correspondent, Afia Hagen. Now, to more stories about the passing of the Pope. When the papacy becomes vacant due to the Pope's death or resignation, the leadership of the Catholic Church passes to the College of Cardinals. They begin by holding general congregations where they discuss key issues and prepare for the upcoming papal election known as the conclave. Only cardinals under the age of 80, called cardinal electors, are eligible to vote. The process begins with a Mass of Guardians in St. Peter's Basilica, invoking the Holy Spirit for assistance in making the right choice. Now, the cardinals then proceed into the Sistine Chapel, take an oath of secrecy, and begin voting. 4 rounds of balloting are held each day, requiring a 2/3 majority for a candidate to win. Now, if no pope is chosen, the ballots are burned, producing black smoke as a sign of no result. Now, once a cardinal receives the necessary votes, he accepts the election, chooses a papal name, and is dressed in papal vestments. Now, the final ballots are burned with chemicals to create white smoke, signaling the election of a new pope. And finally, the senior cardinal deacon steps out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica and announces to the world, Habemus Papam, meaning we have a pope. The new pope then appears to give his blessing to the people of Rome and to the world. You're still live with us on the news. It's time now to go on a short break, and when we come back, we've got more stories, so stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, a former presidential aspirant of the All Progressives Congress, Tunde Bakare, has decried the relationship between the executive and legislative arms of government under President Bola Tinubu, asking the Nigerian leader to stop playing God. Now, Bakare, the serving overseer of the Citadel Global Community Church, issued the warning in his State of the Nation address delivered in the Lagos auditorium of his church on Sunday. He raised the alarm over the state of affairs in the country, saying that Nigeria is steering in the wrong direction. Recalling the recent activities of the National Assembly, including the approval of a state of emergency in Rivers, the suspension of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, Bakare said the country's legislative arm of government is now an extension of the executive, grossly violating the principles of separation of powers and rubber-stamping the whims and caprices of President Tinubu's office.
Fellow citizens, at the center of this political banditry is the motor park brand of politics, nurtured by the old brigade politicians and in recent times by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Mr. President, it is through your influence that the Nigerian National Assembly has become a haven for legislative rascality. Mr. President, it's under your watch that the National Assembly has become an extension of the executive, grossly violating the principles of separation of powers and rubber stamping the whims and caprices of your office, all while singing the international anthem of sycophants on your mandate we shall stand. Mr. President, thanks to your political machinations, Nigeria is now bedeviled by a captured National Assembly, the most ineffective.
Now, the Bishop of the Sokoto Catholic Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, has urged President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to take urgent action to end the suffering and insecurity facing Nigerians. Delivering his Easter message, Bishop Kuka decried the culture of brutality and violence across the country, warning that Nigeria risks falling outside the bounds of human civilization. Now, he described the country as turning into a national morgue where citizens are abducted or killed daily by terrorists and criminal groups. The bishop appealed to President Tinubu to show leadership and decisiveness in restoring peace, saying that Nigerians are hanging on the cross and at the mercy of forces of darkness. Now, his message comes amid growing concern over rising insecurity and hardship nationwide. Now, Christians across the 17th local government areas of Plateau State have converged on Jos, the state capital, for a peaceful march against the incessant killings in some parts of the state. Organized by the Christian Association of Nigeria in Plateau State, the peaceful march to the government house is to formally present their grievances to the governor, Caleb Mutfwang. Our correspondent in Jos, Chizoba Anowe, quotes them as saying that they hope that this process will help their voice to put an end to the killings. Nigeria's Minister of Defense, Mohammed Abubakar, has restated the federal government's commitment to ensuring the safety of both lives and property of citizens, irrespective of their socio-cultural differences. Mohammed Abubakar was speaking during his visit in Plateau State to commiserate with victims of the April 2 killings in Bassa local government area of the state by alleged herdsmen. News Central's Chizoba Anowe tells us more.
This visit of the Minister of Defense, Mohammed Abubakar, is his second in Plateau State in less than 1 year. He was received at the Yakubu Gowon Airport in Haipang by security chiefs in the state. This time around, he is here to commiserate with victims of the recent deadly attacks in Bassa local government area of the state. He assured that everything is being done to ensure an end to these senseless killings.
We are working as a team, the state government, the community leaders, the security agencies, and above all, the command and directive from the president that this must end. And I am sure all the security agencies, the government and the state government and the different stakeholders are on this to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
He conveyed President Bola Tinubu's charge to security chiefs in Nigeria to fish out masterminds of the attacks for justice to be done.
The president is really committed on this, and he has directed that we must find the perpetrators of this evil and let them face justice. and the security agencies are investigating seriously, and we are on the trail, and God's willing, we'll get to the root of it, and the perpetrators will be apprehended and they will face justice.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Nentawe Yowada, assured that support efforts for victims of the attacks have been initiated.
We're providing 1,000 hectares of land right inside the local government here to ensure that we cultivate the land for them. We've already acquired the land, and they know the land already. And we've already signed an MOU with them before I left and came over this not today. And we are cultivating and ensuring that for every households, each household will be given half a hectare. So for the 1,000 hectare, we're targeting 2,000 people, household to benefit from the 1,000 hectares.
Right behind me here, inside this compound, is where we have the Minister of Defense and of course the Minister of Humanitarian Services, who have come here to pay a condolence visit on the traditional ruler of this community where these attacks took place some days back. It is hoped that their visit here will bring a positive turn in this community, as well as in every other affected community in Plateau State. In Bassa local government area of Plateau State for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
We do have our correspondent, Chizoba Anyowe, who put together that report and has been following the process for a while now in Plateau State, live, ready to give us update. Chizoba Anyowe, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. What is the update as of this moment regarding the protest by the Christians about the killings in Plateau State?
Welcome to Plateau State capital. Here I'm at the government house and the communications. And you can see behind me, the few of them still around. They are members of the Peace Association of Nigeria in Plateau State from all the 17 local governments. And they have gathered to say enough about all the killings, all the wanting killings, spanning over 20 years. I mean, between burial, mass burial from one to another. For the past 3 weeks, actually, it's been surprise and mourning in the state, and they think it is high time they spoke out to the government of this country through the state government to ensure an end to these consistent killings that doesn't have any end in sight. So they have just come here, presented the document, who we still do, and said it's going to be a presentation. So everything possible to ensure that these killings are brought to an end.
All right, Chizoba Anyowe, thank you so much for the update. We'll definitely be circling back to Plateau State to see how the protest is going and what the development is. Now, in the face of renewed terrorist activities in Borno State, residents of Goza have vowed not to abandon their ancestral homes. Now, during a visit to the community following the attacks in Yemtake, among other areas, Senator Ali Ndume urged residents to rise up, report suspicious activities, and collaborate with security forces to prevent further incidents. News Central's Moru Kirawa, who traversed several parts of Goza local government area, has more.
An aerial view of Goza local government area in Nigeria's northeast. Despite the sporadic attacks on communities like Yemtake, Guduf, among others, community leaders and residents have expressed determination to remain in their localities.
Shekaran jiya nan da aka kawo hari anan ma inda kana wuri ma sai kai mamaki ba in garin da mata da maza duk fita muna yi su wallahi muna fita mu je mu tare wurin sai dai sojoji mayar da mu suna yi wannan sanan garam a Goza suna da gaba ki da ba wani ba inda aka tafi mutane ma suna marmarin zama a Gozan gaba ki da.
Through the rough and dusty terrain, we traveled to Yemtake, one of the communities recently attacked by terrorists.
Zamu zo mu ba su abinci, zamu ba su tampolin, zamu ba su taburma, zamu ba su katifa. Gabaki da a zo na yi zaman lafiya, a yi noma, kuma in Allah ya raba za a fasa ba. Mutanen Goza kowa ya shirya. yanzu ko su ko mu ne babu magana bari.
When I was a commercial driver, I supplied on a weekly basis. But today you can see that the situation here is very devastated, and actually we are calling on the federal government to do more.
Ba da goye ba wasu yanki za mu tashi da addu'a tunda su samu kayan aiki su ci gaba da jajircewa kamar da jajirce insha Allah Allah zai ba su nasara akan makiyan.
Gallantry response by frontline troops as well as civilian JTF, vigilante and hunters at Yamtake, showcasing their level of commitment to ensuring peace.
The situation now is calm, but actually unpredictable. We will continue to ensure that Yamtake is held in strength so that, like I said, we will achieve our mandate.
So I want to use this opportunity to actually commend the action of the President and Commander-in-Chief, Bola Tinubu, and of course the service chiefs for their gallantry and quick response to a situation like this. This further tells the terrorists and the insurgents that they can't defeat our Nigerian army.
The Goza community, including both the leaders and teaming youth, resolved to rise up and protect their communities and support the armed forces.
Goza naku ne da sanin cewa mun ga wulakanci da kuma barin gaya maka in ka fita ka kare kasan nan shine idan ka rasa ranka aljanna zaka tafi.
The battle to ending the over a decade-long terrorist activities in the Lake Chad is continuing, and the Nigerian army says it is committed to ensure stability for socio-economic activities to thrive, particularly in newly resettled communities. From Yamtake in Goza local government area for New Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Now, residents of Barutan local government area in Kwara State have confirmed the presence of armed bandits operating in the northern part of the council. They say they came under attack over the weekend by bandits believed to have been pushed out of the northeast and northwest regions. Some residents were reportedly killed in the assault, while the community's vigilante vehicle and several motorcycles were set ablaze. Although the Kwara State Police Command has repeatedly denied the presence of bandits in the area, locals in Barutan are presenting photo and video evidence to support their claims. Now, Barutan is approximately a 6-hour drive from Ilori, the capital of Kwara State. When we come back, we'll give you the details of these stories that we have mentioned and more. Do stay with us. Many thanks for joining us. And now to the festivities. Easter Monday being the last day of the Easter holidays and the last day before the resumption of work has brought FCT residents from across the area councils to unwind and socialize with one another. Now, News Central's correspondent Aisha Saliu is currently at the Abuja Millennium Park to examine the mood of residents amidst the economic crisis, as well as checkmate their preparedness to resume work after the holidays. Aisha, good afternoon to you and happy holidays. How's it going over there? You are currently at the Millennium Park. What is the mood of the people like?
Good afternoon, blessings. Thank you so much. Happy holidays to you too. Even though we're not on holidays, we're still working. But regarding the mood of the celebration, you would agree with me, and I would say that FCT residents have trooped out en masse at the Abuja Millennium Park, and so also other relaxation centers, just to unwind, socialize with their families, because they have had, quite the month. And this is Easter Monday. It is a day where, families, people are expected to, just the reason for the season, celebrate. And if you'd look just right behind me, there are lots of people here, children, adults, male, female, just scattered over the Millennium Park. They are celebrating with one another, socializing, sharing food, sharing drinks. Even regardless of the economic crisis, they are saying, even though we're facing this hardship at the moment, we must celebrate. We cannot say because we're facing the hardship, we have to celebrate and then, the fact that Easter Sunday was just yesterday, and just according to the scripture, Jesus Christ has resurrected, and it's more like he has cleared out the sins of everybody. So they are here celebrating that significance of the day. And I don't want you to hear from me alone. We have other people who are not even Christians, but they're also here to celebrate a public holiday, just to unwind, socialize, and just relax. I have a lot of people here, but let me get you someone who would speak with you at the moment. Good afternoon, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell me your name or where you?
I'm Fatima Abdullahi.
So today is Easter Monday. What does this day mean to you, and the significance of the public holiday in particular?
Today Easter, being Easter, celebrating with my family is the most important thing. I don't usually celebrate Easter, but coming together with my family makes me to start celebrating Easter. So the public holiday, not just the public holiday, celebrating it with my family just means a lot to me, and that's what I love about it.
Okay, so we know that work resumes tomorrow. So how prepared are you to go back to work?
Oh, my one leg is there, and the other one is at the work already. Yes.
Okay, so that means you're ready to go back to work. Well, blessings. You have heard from Fatima, who has, given us her mood for today. She is excited about the public holiday and also Easter Monday, where she said that she's, here with her family, even though she doesn't really celebrate Easter, but she is here taking advantage of the public holiday to celebrate with her family, and she's also, prepared and eager to resume work tomorrow. Blessings, over to you.
I'm also a little bit curious. You have said that despite of the economic challenges, people have still trooped out and said, you know what, regardless of what the prices of things are in the market, we're still going to celebrate. But do you think that this affected the turnout? Because we know the Millennium Park to usually be filled with children, in times like this, playing, and even parents just, having a swell time. Do you think that has in any way affected the turnout? And not just at the Millennium Park, outside in different spaces, malls where people usually would be gathered?
Okay, well, I would say yes and no. For this particular venue, Millennium Park, it hasn't affected the turnout a bit. A lot of people are out here to celebrate, but then you'd say for other parts of Abuja, because it's not a work day, it's a public holiday. Most or some of the people are at home, but then taking into cognizance, the traffic situation, it would even surprise you to know that Abuja roads are this free today. But then some people are still at home because of the economic crisis. They would tell you that instead of coming out to spend the monies that they do not even have, and this is just like the meat of the month, so they would rather just stay at home. But regarding people who are here at the moment, and we hope to also checkmate other recreational centers within the Federal Capital Territory to bring you up to speed on the mood and also the turnout of people.
Correspondent Aisha Seliu, who is bringing us the update on the Easter celebrations from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Thanks once again to our correspondent. Now to more stories. In a protest on Sunday, women in Guinea-Bissau attacked a Chinese-run zircon mining site in the northwest, setting fire to equipment. Now, the women said they were driven to act after the authorities ignored their complaints about the environmental damage the mining activities were causing to their farms. Now, witnesses reported that several hundred women took part in the protest at Nikin, near the resort town of Valera, close to the Senegal border. The Chinese companies had been operating at the site since 2022. Interior Minister Boche Kande condemned the destruction, saying that the facilities had been completely burned down. He vowed to send more security guards to protect the sites during reconstruction, adding that the protesters who fled into the forest must be tracked down and arrested. Now, outspoken former ZANU-PF member and ex-war veteran Blessed Geza has called for a two-day protest on Tuesday and on Wednesday, demanding President Emerson Mnangagwa's resignation. Now, Geza, who exited the ruling party under a cloud of corruption allegations, has been a vocal critic of the government, accusing it of failing to address Zimbabwe's worsening economic crisis. Meanwhile, Mnangagwa has warned citizens against relying on social media content, claiming that much of it designed to sow division among the populace.
on Tuesday and Wednesday, 22 and 23 April 2025. Munuwese Kumba. Every Zimbabwean must stay at home. We must shut down Zimbabwe completely. This is to make a strong statement to Mnangagwa and his Ganandos.
Now joining us to discuss more on this is Zimbabwean political activist Tino McClan, a human rights activist from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, beg your pardon. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, how do you think that Zimbabweans will respond to Geza's call for a protest? Are we anticipating a widespread participation? Why or why not?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Greetings to all our viewers. Zimbabweans will respond to Blessed Geza by following instructions, staying away, starting tomorrow. Because what is calling for is we want to fix our situation as Zimbabwe. So for us, all of us, we need to respond and not going to work starting tomorrow until we have a better Zimbabwe.
Right, and how significant is the involvement of war veterans like Blessed Geza in mobilizing public support? Do they still hold that much influence in Zimbabwean society?
War veterans like Blessed Geza, they still have some influence, especially old people who see them, the role that they played during Liberation War. But they are not strong because as young people, we need to jump in and support because what is fighting for all of us. So we need to join hands together, regardless our political parties and where we come from. We need to join hands and support Baba Geza starting from tomorrow until we have a new government in our country.
Right. Now, critics have argued that Geza lacks substantial backing and that these protests may not result in meaningful change. What's your take on this?
First, in Zimbabwe, we lack unity. What we need to do right now, we need to unite as Zimbabweans. Like you are from Matabeleland, you are from Mashonaland, any province in Zimbabwe, we need to come together and back him. Because there are some people who are saying like he's bringing it for ZANU-PF. This is not a ZANU-PF matter, but it's a Zimbabwe thing. So look at our country right now. We don't have medication in our hospital. Look at roads, they are bad, people are suffering. So let's support him. We need to back him. All of us in Zimbabwe, I call on young people, let's join in. Let's encourage one another. From starting tomorrow, let's go and fight for our country. If we don't fight for our country, it's very, very sad. Look at Zimbabweans. They are all over in the world, do you understand? We don't have place to call home. I think it's time for us to unite and speak with one voice and go and fight for our country. If we don't fight for our country starting tomorrow, no one will do it for us. So I think it's high time. I call on young Zimbabweans to come out in numbers and let's obey the instruction of Baba Geza and support. I believe we have a better Zimbabwe.
Right. Thank you so much, Tino McClan, Zimbabwean political activist, for joining us. Now to sports. The Director General of the National Sports Commission, Honorable Bukola Olokpade, has arrived in Mauritius for a strategic meeting with Weightlifting Federation of Africa and President Khalid Meleli. The high-level talks aim to enhance Nigeria's status in global weightlifting through improved athlete development, coaching, and international partnerships. Nigeria remains a dominant force in the sport across Africa and beyond. Mahail, who also chairs the IWF Development and Education Commission, plays a key role globally. Now, Olokpade said the NSC remains committed to expanding opportunities for Nigerian lifters and strengthening ties with international sports bodies. Well, that's all on the news of this hour, but before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. Now, we did tell you that world leaders have reacted to the passing of Pope Francis. We also mentioned Christian Association of Nigeria held peace march in protests and killings in Plateau. And finally, we told you that war veterans leader in Zimbabwe has called for 2-day protest demanding President Emmerson Mnangagwa's resignation. Remember, you may send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Also, do well to follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, Gold TV, channel 23, StarTimes, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Blessings Musugu.